Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This week, I've been seeing a lot of posts in social media and a lot of content online commenting on how there is an ongoing epidemic, or perhaps the more correct phrase is pandemic, especially if it's a worldwide phenomenon. There's supposedly a pandemic of loneliness, which has been going on, which has been pervading modern society for a couple of years now. And I'm sure many of you have chanced upon these commentaries, and supposedly this pandemic of loneliness has, of course, been triggered, exacerbated by our previous COVID 19 pandemic. But I would argue, I would like to think, and many commentators on this phenomenon, one of the more prominent modern commentators on the supposed pandemic of loneliness is French philosopher Jean Baudrillard. So even philosophers do recognize that this phenomenon might exist in the present times in modern society. I would like to think that this pandemic of loneliness actually did start even before this infection, this COVID 19 pandemic hit us. Perhaps it's more like a stream, a budding volcanic eruption. It has been going on for some time now. Perhaps we just were too busy, were too preoccupied to notice this budding volcanic eruption. And it just so happened that it took a global event, a global catastrophe, i.e., the COVID 19 pandemic, for it to surface its ugly head, for us to finally accept and recognize that, oh, this phenomenon does indeed exist. To give you context, a recent, that is 2024, study by the American Psychiatric Association, published in their journal 2024, states that in the last 5 years, in Northern America at least, rates of unaliving oneself, I'm not sure if I can say the word outright, but the rates of unaliving oneself has been steadily and unabatedly increasing in the last 5 years in North America alone. 10, 20 years ago, the supposed rate of unaliving oneself in the same continent among people aged 18 to 50 years old was just, well, not just, but it was 12%. And last year, the rate has gone up to 28%. So that is more than half of the rate of unaliving oneself 20 years ago, 2 decades ago. So we have concrete facts to say that perhaps indeed there is an pandemic of loneliness going on. But one does not need to go into this territory of literally unaliving oneself to perhaps recognize that there is this pandemic going on. Just look, just examine your own life. Me personally, I have been feeling it too, especially in the last 2 years. Sometimes I feel as though I'm just going through my life in autopilot. Sometimes when I drive to work, from work, going back home, I feel as though I'm just a machine, just doing what I have to do what I was programmed, trained to do, i.e., which is to work. And oftentimes I feel as though I'm not even in charge of my own body. It's like I'm just an autopilot all the time. And some of my friends and colleagues, of course, that's their story to tell, but I believe they feel it more intensely. Anhedonia, which is a medical term which means that the things you used to find joy in, you no longer feel and find the same enjoyment which you used to. For example, if you used to enjoy drinking your morning cup of joe, one day you just find yourself not enjoying the same freshly brewed cup of coffee like you used to. That's called anhedonia. And sometimes I feel that too. In the past years, I used to be not an aficionado, but I used to really love brewing coffee, enjoying a freshly brewed cup of coffee. But sometimes I find myself just drinking coffee for the sake of it because I need the caffeine. Nothing more. Nothing more than that. That is what we call anhedonia. And of course, some people feel this pandemic of loneliness even more intensely, to the point that they are already clinically diagnosed with depression. Speaking of a clinical diagnosis of depression, the same organization, APA, the American Psychiatric Association, published in their same journal last year, November 2024, while not necessarily leading to literally unaliving oneself, the rate of clinically diagnosed depression has also been steadily increasing in the last decade. Now, of course, one would always argue that perhaps psychiatrists, I'm not a psychiatrist by the way, but one can always argue that perhaps the psychiatrists are just overdiagnosing people to have clinical depression. But my rebuttal to that is, I will just leave you to decide whether you think it's just overdiagnosis or whether people are just really, really filling the criteria for clinical depression. I will leave that up to you to decide. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, and I'm sure you've heard it all too often, all too familiar now, is I don't think it's a good idea to not recognize the elephant in the room. I think when there's something glaring, when there's something bad that's in your room, in our room, I think the first step is always to acknowledge it. It's never a good idea to just sweep it under the rug and ignore it as though everything is fine. You can live your life ignoring the signs and the symptoms, just being on autopilot all the time. That's your life. But personally, at least for me, I think being aware, taking charge of your own life, I think that's always the better option. And that starts with awareness, with acknowledgement. Let me know in a personal message or in the comments below whether you feel the same way, whether you feel as though things are not exactly how they ought to be, like something's off, Let me know how you feel in the past few years, in the past few months. And do you agree? Do you agree with the existence of this loneliness pandemic? Thank you, and I wish you all the best. Stay connected with your loved ones, with your friends, with your family. I don't think human beings were not meant to be islands. We are inherently social beings, and that applies even to the most introverted of individuals. If you feel as though something is off, make sure you are connected. Make sure you don't isolate yourself. Thank you, and I wish you all the best.